Hi guys, as you can tell, we had a Zoom challenge and I'm unable to be there. And I said, you know what? I don't really need to be here because the focus is on my guests. And today's guest is you guys have to take time to watch this. Her name is Melo. She's the mama of four. Yes, four, toddler through teens. She has a master's degree in social work. She's a success and mindset strategist on a mission to create, listen to this, create hope and inspiration in the world by advocating for women and children to conquer stigma and adversity. And we are just talking a little bit before we started how her little one started preschool and Mel was trying to get her into a positive mindset. And she's like, no, we're gonna have a beautiful day. No, which teachers do you like? I don't like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we thought, as moms, we go through the same thing where we try so hard to get up in the morning and feel inspired. So Mello is going to give us some tips on how to get out of bed just with that desire to, you know what, I am going to have a great day, even though you're feeling tired and you just want to snuggle up under the covers for the next 2 or 3 hours. Thanks, Mello, for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So what should we do?
Oh, where do we start?
How can we help moms just function without losing their sanity? Because that's my whole mission to moms, but it could be moms, dads, aunts, uncles, educators, because all of us, like you were saying, right? It's not just moms. We just need to know how to conquer the day without feeling like running away.
Yeah, I'm a success and mindset strategist. So my first answer is going to be it all starts with your mindset. Realizing that we have a choice in everything. So we talked briefly about starting your routine the night before with planning your routine and committing to your routine the night before. Routine in the morning is important because whatever your routine is, it can be exercise, it could just be having coffee by yourself, it could be journaling, whatever you do, that's going to set your day. You get a chance to get in your head before the rest of the world does. And that's so, so, so important because how many of us wake up in the morning after alarm goes off, we do our thing, and then we like hop on our phone or even maybe before we get out of bed. I mean, now the norm is to like hit up social media and see what's going on or what notifications you got overnight. You're letting the outside world in already. So, I mean, if you weren't comparing yourself to anybody else, like mommies, for example, we have a lot of pressure with social media to have this certain lifestyle because we can put whatever we want, right? We can portray whoever we want to be online. And we forget that other people have that ability too. So we might be on social media in the morning and like, oh my gosh, look at Betty. She made the most amazing lunches for all of her children. How does she do that? I'm such a horrible mom because I'm still in bed. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
we're setting ourselves up without even knowing it because we're on autopilot. So if we make a decision the night before to that we're gonna get out of bed, and I've done this myself actually. I adopted Mel Robbins. She has the 5-second rule. So you interrupt your thought, you give yourself, you count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and decide. Psychologically, just that interruption in thought and counting down makes you more apt to make a decision and the decision that you want to make, but your emotions or you talk yourself out of making. So like for waking up, my alarm, I wake up at 3 in the morning, every morning, Monday through Friday. For a little while, sometimes I have a hard time waking up. And one week I was really tired in particular, but I knew I had to be up the next morning. I had a Zoom at 4 a.m. So I told myself, I need to be up, I need to get into my routine, and I need to get ready and prepare myself for the day. So I'm tired tonight. Like literally, I went to bed, I think at midnight 30. And I told myself, as soon as my alarm went off, I said, I'm going to get up in the morning. And I gave myself the 5-second rule. My alarm went off. I was like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, wake up. And I just got out of bed, turned off my alarm and got out of bed. So it starts with a decision and a commitment to yourself. And this is kind of maybe going a little bit deeper, like to the internal stuff, because it really is. Do we respect ourselves? Like, do we respect ourselves enough to follow a command that we give ourselves? And bigger than that, if we can't follow a command that we give ourselves, how do we expect our children to follow our commands? And I don't mean command like we're the drill sergeant, but like we ask our kids to do things. We have expectations for them. How do we expect them to fulfill those expectations if we cannot fulfill the expectations to ourselves?
Definitely. So role modeling.
Role modeling and just, I mean, beyond that, like having your internal resource as being having respect for yourself and a commitment to yourself, being able to follow your command. That's discipline. Some people don't like that word. I personally don't like that word because it reminds me of rules, structure, even though I thrive on those things.
Mhm.
But it's that thing about being told what to do or having to do something or being confined. So for me, it's self-respect. It's being accountable. It's being accountable to myself, because getting up in the morning means I start my day the right way, which means I can start my kids' days the right way.
I love that, seeing it as self-respect and being accountable, because you're right. When people say and hear discipline, sometimes it is like, okay, we are going to have to do something dreaded. But if you have self-respect, you're actually having a positive mindset about what's to come.
Well, and it's about the self, right? I mean,
Yes.
we, whether we like to admit it or not, we are very self-centered beings. We like to do things that make us feel good, right? And feeling good about ourselves is something that's really hard to do sometimes, especially if you have self-confidence issues, insecurity. So I mean, just being able to honor yourself in that way will
Hmm,
boost
hmm.
so many other things. I mean, not only will you, your internal stuff, you'll boost your confidence, you'll feel good about yourself because you can listen to yourself and you did something that you said you were going to do. Because how many times do we have a list of to-dos and we don't get to like a bunch of them because whatever happened during the day, and then we beat ourselves up about it later? Like, why beat ourselves up? We have a moment to just be proud of ourselves and just be like, yes, I got up. Like, this is the first morning, but I got up. Or, you know, like I didn't get up
Right,
yesterday, but
right.
today I did. You know, and being present in that moment. And that way, you know, again, good example for our kids, like you said, role modeling. But on top of that, then we can start our kids' days the right way too. You know, like we're not waking up all grouchy and like rushing and like, hurry up, get your clothes on. We gotta go eat
Yeah.
breakfast. Are you hungry? Blah, blah, blah. You know, like you know how crazy it can get when you have little ones, you know, or
Yes.
just kids that aren't autonomous yet, which
Hmm,
means
hmm.
anyone under, I don't know, 25.
Yes, exactly. I was gonna say it can be your teens. It could be, I have a 19-year-old who sometimes just, and you think, wait, they're 19, but we forget that just because you're 18, 19, even 20, it doesn't mean that,
That's amazing though. You're
no.
talking about this, the expectations we have. So
Yes.
realizing that our expectations may not be where our children are at. So like recognizing that we may have unrealistic expectations. For example, like I had a girlfriend, her son went into middle school and he was very moody. He was very like, I know, you know, just snappy, just not
Yes, yes,
himself.
yes.
And I said, you know, first of all, girl, there's hormones. He may be going through puberty. You may not hear or see physical things, but there's stuff going on inside of him. Number two, he went from elementary to middle school where there's a whole new set of expectations, not only from you at home, where you expect him to be more responsible. He's the oldest. You want him to help take care and be a good example for the little ones. I said, but at school, he's navigating a whole new world. He's going from being in one class most of the time to switching classes, you know, multiple responsibilities, very, very from nurturing to very much autonomous.
Hmm,
And then on
hmm,
top of
hmm.
that, the social structure, like they're navigating a new social world. They're at the bottom of the totem pole, so to speak, you know, and there's kids from other schools coming in and everyone's kind of establishing their little social roles and finding where they fit in and stuff. So there's
Hmm.
a lot going on at every stage of transition for kids that we don't think about because we're adults. Like our world is like the size of a ping pong ball. I mean, the younger they are, the smaller the world is. So we have to remember that we have all this knowledge, experience. Our brains are a lot more developed, so we can
Hmm,
think of things in a different
hmm.
way and on a higher level. Whereas our kids are navigating this world and they're learning to get to where we are. But I think we forget that because we just expect, like, you're 13 now, you should know better. You're 13 now. I've been telling you this for so long. And I'm guilty of this too. Like, you know, we just expect our kids to know because we've told them, or you've seen me do it, you know, every night I do this, but their minds aren't there with us, you know. So just realizing the expectations that we have may not be realistic and they may not even match with our kids' abilities or capabilities.
Yes, I've noticed that, because
Yes,
sometimes,
I've noticed that because
especially my 19-year-old, yeah, right, she hears me say, I know, after I say something, she's, I know you're preparing me for life as an adult. I know it's because, and then you do sound like a broken record. And when I talk to parents, and when you research, it is blaming, right? It's shaming them. You should know better. But then these words come out of your mouth, and before you
Mhm.
know it, then they end up feeling that they're incompetent, or sorry, I don't know, I
Mhm.
don't know it all, sorry, I can't be like your student. And I'm not even comparing, but I try to do some kind of inspirational thing, and I'm realizing it's not inspirational to them. They hear, okay, you see me as
It's
incompetent.
tiger momming.
Yes, exactly. Can you
right?
explain
But I
that?
mean,
I love that. For those who've never heard of
tiger
that.
momming. So
Tiger mommy, yes.
tiger mommy, and I'm not trying to stereotype, but I mean, I'm Chinese and I'm guilty of this, but kind of the basic premise that we beat our kids down to bring them up. So it's kind of like showing somebody the glass is half empty for them to see that it's half full.
Yeah,
And
so
we
you
think
have the
that we're
right
doing it.
intentions, but then we are not really inspiring them, right? What does that do to someone's mindset?
Well, we forget that they're human too, and they have feelings, they have perception. But like you said, it breaks them down. It makes them feel not confident. Well, that's a little bit deeper, but on the very surface level, it just makes them feel not good enough. Like, I'm
Hmm.
not living up to your expectations. I can never live up to your expectations. I don't do anything right. Or you expect so much of me and I'm just not there yet and you don't understand me. Like, it just creates a whole, like they say, confusion breeds confusion. That's what it does, right? Our intention, just because we have our intention, doesn't mean that they understand our intention. Again, their minds, like if we're talking about like teens, a 14-year-old brain and our adult brain, very, very different. The things going on in their brain are very different, the thought processes are very different, and that's just because their brain biologically is not as developed as ours, and they don't have the life experience and those connections that we do in our brain. So it just makes them feel incompetent, and that can also lead to feelings of depression, feelings of misunderstood, and that feeds into low self-confidence, low self-esteem, insecurity, second guessing, um, less risk taking. And I mean risk taking in that positive way, like they're less likely to take chances on themselves or opportunities that may help them grow.
So do you have tips
And
on?
it damages your relationship with them, not
Yes.
to mention that.
Yes, that's what I've noticed. So they, my both of my daughters say you would have parented us differently. And but what I'm doing differently is apologizing more and more, owning it. You know what? I messed up. I shouldn't have said that, which I never did before. Because you're in that
Mhm.
parent mindset where no, this is I'm trying to tell you this. And if they don't understand, you just really feel that you will be able to inspire them through this life lesson. Then I'm realizing all they want, like any of us. I asked my 19-year-old a couple years ago, what do you want? And she said, kids my age want to be heard, understood, and not judged. Just that. And then I'm realizing, wow, the things that we say, we think is, they're like, oh, these are words of wisdom. And I'm told you turn everything into a life lesson. But we think that it'll inspire them. So do you have maybe phrases or questions? I had one of my clients say, can you just give me like a list of responses? And you can't really have a list because it depends on the personality of the child, the mood of the child,
Mhm.
the
And your
situation. But
style too, like if you're going to say something like, I very much appreciate that you said that, but you're the kind of parent that doesn't say things like that. That's going to seem disingenuous. You know what I mean? It's not,
yes.
they're not going to be receptive to it. So it has to come from the heart. Whatever you say has to come from the heart.
What if you don't know? Because she said, some parents say, I just get so livid. And then either an argument ensues where they're playing tug of war with a phone or there's some kind of power struggle. How do you do that countdown or in the middle of it? Because I'm trying to help someone with a anger management issue and he's, middle school. But once you're in that, I'm going to, break a hole in the wall. And then the mother, of course, how do you do that when you're dealing with just losing control really and then trying to be patient and compassionate when you're super upset?
I mean, knowing your boundaries and knowing what, I mean, if it's healthier to walk away, you have to walk away.
Yes.
Because what it comes down to in that moment is being right.
Yes.
And that's not something we want to hear, but we already have a dichotomy set up with with our children. There's a clear hierarchy. We are here and they are there, and at some levels we like allow them to like be equals with us, in discussion as they get older. Excuse me, as they grow more autonomous. But really there's always this dichotomy. There's always this hierarchy of like, I am the parent and you are the child. So
Hmm.
being the bigger person and knowing the limits and knowing what's healthier and what's better and letting go of the need to be right, because our need to be right is only feeding into our ego.
Yes.
And ego sometimes is not a nice word that people want, that resonates with people, but I mean, if we're talking psychological terms, it feeds into the ego, and our ego wants to be right. If you want to go a little bit like more spiritual, it's our external, it's our insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
When we want to be right, it's our need, it's kind of our stroke of reassurance of, again, that power dynamic,
Mm-hmm.
and that we know better, that we are somehow mucho supremo to our children, when we're really not. And that's really hard because nobody likes to admit they're wrong, parent or child. No
Mm-hmm.
matter how old you are, everybody wants to be seen, heard, understood, and not judged. But it's really hard to be vulnerable that way. And even to admit, as a parent, especially, to take a break because it's too heated. Because
Mm-hmm.
for some people, that feels like I'm admitting I'm wrong or I'm admitting I'm losing control. But to be able to control the situation is the real power.
True. I love that. To be, can you say that one more time? Because I think that's something we should put on an index card and look at it
To
throughout
be
the
in
day.
control of the situation is the real power. Because in reality, what does it do for us to be right with our kids? In the end, if we're struggling to the point where it's a physical struggle or a verbal struggle, what do we accomplish in the end? Like, what is the outcome? I mean, we just talked about how it reinforces that power dynamic and that hierarchy of I'm right, you're wrong, I know better, you listen to me. And that old paradigm, or what we always, I think
Mm-hmm.
everybody
Mm-hmm.
culturally grows up with, children are to be seen and not heard. Very
Yes.
rarely in cultures are children like the focus, and like everything's about the babies and the kids and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
exploring and learning. And I think as a Western culture, we try to incorporate that, but it's still hard because we have societal standards and expectations, and that filters into us and the way we parent, whether we are aware of it or not. So it's being mindful, um and just recognizing, like I said, like, where to draw the line, because we've all been there, right? We've talked about it, like how, like you said, we're in this moment and we're trying to inspire, and we just totally do the opposite. We just demolish their self-esteem. They've totally shut down. They're not even hearing us, and they don't want to respond to us. And like, then we want them to say something, like, because again, that's our need for reassurance. Did you hear me?
Yes.
Do you
Yes.
understand
Oh my
me?
gosh.
Like,
Yes. And then when you say, "Did you hear me?" You don't get the
and they're like,
response that you
yeah.
desire. Yeah. What? What did you
And then
say?
and then that's the thing, right? Right? The power trip again continues. Talk to me nicely. That's not showing me
Yes.
respect. Did we show them respect in that moment? We don't realize it, that we just, again, we totally bash somebody. That's like going into work, or going to school, and you're a student, right? And your teacher just rails on you when you come in and you have no idea why. And you're just kind of like, well, oh, forget it. You shut down, you're done. You have nothing to say. You can't hear anything, you know? So in the end, if we're struggling with our kids to that extent, what did we accomplish in the end? Even if we get what we want out of them, did they really learn the lesson? Because if they heard it in a negative way, and they didn't learn the lesson as well as they could have. If we sat down and talked to them respectfully, if they felt respected, acknowledged, heard, understood, not judged, you know what I mean? And it's very hard to have those conversations with our children because, again, we set up this power dynamic and the hierarchy of parent child. And for, again, the ego to admit that we're wrong, or to admit that we need to do something different, or that what happened wasn't okay, that's super hard. I think as parents, a lot of people just like to sweep it under the rug, and the next day it's like it didn't happen, or maybe like a quick I'm sorry, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But again, that's a lesson in itself. If we're able to communicate with our children, we are teaching them how to communicate further beyond us. Then they'll be able to communicate with us, and they'll be able to get their needs met. And that feeds into their intrinsic value and their intrinsic resources. So I feel like we should, as parents, we have such a great opportunity to capitalize on so many things. I mean, we've been given this gift. Some people may not see it as a gift. It's a beautiful burden to me sometimes because it's a lot of responsibility, but I have the opportunity to directly impact four little people in life. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
and since I've kind of taken on, like, I've studied, I've practiced positive mindset, but I've never applied it to the extent that I do now. And now that I do, and I see the difference it's made for me, I really want to do it I really do it with my children, because I realize, like, all the ways I've kind of messed up as a mom. I've
Mm-hmm.
tiger mommed it so hard because, again, it's my responsibility to make sure that you can take care of yourself when I'm gone. I'm not going to be here
Yes.
forever. And again, that's reminding your kids that, for some kids who are very sensitive, that may be like instilling anxiety in them. My mom is not going to be here forever, or like, because again, their world is this small,
When I didn't
and they're
realize
thinking,
that, yeah, even my 25-year-old says, "Why do you always say that? Why do you say when I'm gone, I want you to have like these memories when I'm gone?" And I didn't realize that because that
right? And
is
like,
our purpose. But then you're making your child, no matter even if they're 20s, I'm thinking she's an adult now. So I want to make sure that fill in the blank. But I love how you said, we do have to let our ego aside. I think seeing our kids as beautiful burdens, just the word beautiful, instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go home after work and when you some moms just I used to just dread coming home because I knew that something all you have to hear is mom, I need mom,
And you're
can
like, oh,
we
and you're like, I just want to
I need 10 minutes. Can I do 10 minutes? No. I just want to ask you, can we? And then what do you think is something that can give us that 5 minutes? Like that when you count or when you first walk in the door, you have all it takes is one child coming up to you, right? Even if you have multiple children, it's just that one child, you're like, I'm done with work. And then you walk
There's a
in.
couple of things you can do. I mean, you can either physically set it as a routine, just like we make routines for our children, like taking care of their bodies. So hygiene, taking a bath, eating, sleeping. We make routines for them. That can be part of your routine that like when we get home, mommy gets 5 minutes to herself. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one way. If you really like the structure, the very clear structure, like this is a part of your day, you physically build it into part of your day. Or if in the moments when it comes on the fly, like again, we all want to be respected, acknowledged, heard, and understood. So if we want to be respected, acknowledged, heard, and understood for our 5 minutes that we want to ourselves, we have to respect, acknowledge, and understand our child and be able to explain to them, like, look, mommy really just needs 5 minutes and I'll be able to give you my undivided attention. Can you just hold on? I mean, some kids might fight it, but if you set the precedent to that, like, this is what I say and this is what's going to happen, and you just do it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it
And
just
it'll become a
is.
habit, right?
I
It'll
mean,
become a habit.
I did that with my child yesterday. We went to the beach. So I had an opportunity with my second youngest. He's 5. We went to the beach, just me and him. And I was on my phone because I'm guilty of it always. I'm always working. And I was doing a post for social media, which doesn't take precedent over my child, but I knew I had to get it done too because it's also something that generates income and gives me the ability to take care of my children. So
Mm-hmm.
I just told, he's like, can we go now? Because we're parked at the beach. Like, how torturous is that for a 5-year-old to be
Yes.
parked at the beach? The beach is right there. And he's like, mommy, I'll wait for you outside. I'm like, no, you can't go outside by yourself. But I just said, look, let mommy finish this 5 minutes. And so 5 minutes, he gave me 5 minutes. We went to the beach and I had to do one more. And I said, okay, after this one, mommy is done. I promise you'll have my undivided attention and I'm not going to have my phone out. And I tucked my phone away right after that. And the whole time it was just all about him. So I think if you make it a habit to talk to your kids that way also,
Mm-hmm.
that's another way of building this habit. And they're going to be able to understand and acknowledge, that, and that's teaching them boundaries too. As they get older, they'll be able to advocate for themselves and just say what they need. You know what I mean? So
Oh,
it's what
yes.
we do with our children is like infinity fold. So positive or negative, what we do with our children as they're growing, no matter how big or small they are, that's going to affect them for the rest of their life, because that's an experience that's going to, that they may tag to something significant, maybe a birthday, school starting, who knows, but it's going to be a part of them for the rest of their life. And whether we like to believe it or not, everything we say and do affects our children. It's kind of like Buddhism, right?
Yes.
Interdependence. Like everything is a ripple effect. And maybe that's something, I just thought of that now, like recognizing that everything you say and do in your moment of heat is a ripple effect. Like I've thought about this too, like scolding my kids and like, what if, and this is horrible, but I think moms, we all do this. We think the most horrible things, like we have a bad moment with our kids and we think, what if something happened to me and I never talk to them again? Or what if
Exactly.
this, and then you beat yourself about it. So again, maximizing our time with our children, our time on earth, you know, to make the most of it. We have a choice. It's so powerful, empowering. And for people who are control freaky like me, OCD, that's really what got me hooked on it. Like realizing that I'm in ultimate control. Like there was nothing more like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. But now it's more just liberating. It's not even about control for me. It's just realizing that I have a choice and my choice impacts more than just me, especially with your children, right? Because
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
it's like us, we get into a fight with our spouse or significant other or a friend, and we carry that through the day. If we're
Yes.
starting off our kids' mornings that way because we're starting off that way, we're affecting the rest of their day. So realizing our impact is just more than just that moment where we're, hurry up, get your clothes on, we gotta go, we're rushing, what are you doing, da, 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 da,
Yeah.
just realizing that we're impacting. I mean, how many times have we dropped our kids off, wave bye to them, and we're like, oh man, I hope I didn't ruin their day.
I've
Like,
done that many times. Yes.
me too, right? Like, or like testing, HSA testing, like, oh my gosh, they have to spend the next whole half of their day testing. And I just like, I don't, I'm worried I clouded their mind, but then also us as adults being able to let go,
Hmm.
realizing that we're human, we make mistakes, and just making that commitment to be better every single day or every opportunity that we can. And it's hard. We're a work in progress. So also being gentle on ourselves.
That's a good reminder, though, being gentle with ourselves, because I think a lot of moms, we hold this guilt. Oh my gosh, I just ruined my child's day. Oh my gosh, why did I
Oh,
say
yeah.
that? And then you pick them up and they're like, "Hey, mom," and nothing.
Right.
And
Like,
you've been with, yeah, holding that in, replaying the scene.
all
And so really,
day.
yeah. And then one time I said, she was about 9. I'm so sorry about this morning. She was, "What happened this morning?" And she totally, when I
Right. So I
said
mean,
that
we
mean
can.
thing to you, yeah, but we do that, and it's a burden on our shoulders, and
Mhm.
we just don't realize. I love how you said that letting go empowers you. Lastly, what advice do you give to the old style parenting, where they just think, you know what, they just got to know. I was in a mom group. It was a workshop, and this one mom said, you know what, I just think they just need to know that I'm the boss, they're the child, and whatever I say goes. It's as simple as that. It's the way that I was raised, and I'm going to raise my children this way.
I mean, you can raise your children that way, but I mean, if you've been raised that way, look at your life is and how you view things. Like, is that how you want your children to grow up? Um, like, do you want to empower your child, or do you want to keep them within the limits that you say? Because most of us, when we have, I think all of us, regardless of the
Hmm.
circumstance, we want the best for this being that came from us, right?
Right.
Um, so that means doing things like, unless you've got like this lavish amazing life with no issues, like, then great, do whatever your parents did. But if you're not happy with where you're at in life, I mean, that comes from the way you were parented and the influences you had from the adults and important people in your life. So I mean, remembering that our kids are sponges from like basically up to age 7, all we do is soak up the world. That's how we learn what we think, feel, and believe about the world.
Hmm.
So I mean, just wanting more for our children, like having them, like, wouldn't you want your kids to be able to face situations and adversity and be able to move on with ease and not feel those feelings like we do, like beat ourselves up about it and like worry about it, fret about it, stress about it? Like, don't you want their life to be more comfortable? So it's changing the way we think. And like, again, we want to be acknowledged, heard. And how do we feel as humans? I guess that's the best advice I could give, right? How do we feel as humans, right? Even if we are the adults and we want to be the boss and we're in charge and they should know that, like, that's a need to be respected, acknowledged, heard, and understood. So as humans, don't we think that our children expect the same or want the same? And you're teaching them to want that, right? So how are they
Right.
ever going to have that until they get into that power dynamic themselves?
Well, I think what a lot of them who, they just think, okay, the power dynamics, it'll make it easier for the parent if the child disobeys, and that's it. So that old saying where, they should be seen and not heard, I think in the old days, we just thought it's more convenient. Don't question what I say. Don't, and then we find out years later that you become an adult who hesitates to share because you fear, not being accepted or ridiculed or judged, right?
Right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, so we have to look at our lives as adults. Like, and that's where it's really difficult. I mean, this is multi-level here. A lot of it is inner work. So looking at ourselves, at our lives, like, are we happy where we're at in life? Like, truly, genuinely, like, not just on the material level, but like personal level, like the way we view and see situations. Like, what do we get mad about? Like, do we want our kids to get mad about those same things? Because guess what? When we get mad about stuff, our kids are usually right there. And if they're not
Right.
right
And then they
there,
see us
hear about
react,
it.
right?
Yeah, whether we're grumbling to our friends, whether we're grumbling to somebody else, or they get in the car and we're just finishing venting, like, oh my gosh, you're not gonna believe what just happened,
Yes, exactly.
I mean, we forget that we are like we're broadcasting to them constantly. So I mean, think about your life. Think of, are you happy with the way you handle situations of conflict, of joy, every possible situation? Look at yourself, like, because we're the mirror, you know what I mean? The outside is the mirror for us of our insides. And do we want more for our kids? Do we want them to feel insecure? Like, do we feel insecure about like getting a new job? Like, do we want them to be able to go into that and just be confident, like, I got this? Because imagine how we would feel. We all have way, like as adults, even we have I wish I was like this, or I wish I was like that.
Yes.
Do we want our kids to be there sitting and wishing like us, like, oh, I wish I looked like that, I wish I was smart like that, I wish I was successful like that? Or do we want our kids to be able to be like, I want that, and have that confidence to try, take that risk to go and get it? Because odds are, like, if we're not teaching them that confidence, they're never going to take those risks on themselves. So we are creating limitations for our children when we just do things the same way. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. I love what you just said. We do create limitations without realizing it, right?
We
Because
don't
we
mean
think
to.
we don't mean to. It's like, oh, you better make sure that you cross both ways, and they're 13. You better make sure that you
Right?
take your water bottle, you're going to be thirsty. And now I'm realizing that the more we say that, the less confidence, because my mom would do that. After I had Sabrina, she was, 2 years old. Did you put socks on her? Did you make sure? And I'm thinking, oh my
My
God.
mom was that way. I was like 38, and my mom is like on the airplane, make sure you go shishi. And I'm like,
Yeah.
mom, or make sure you have a jacket. It might get cold. Like,
Yes.
mom, I know. So I mean, again, and like we talked about earlier, it's like demeaning, right? Like, I'm 38. I know that I use a
Yes.
bathroom. I have a jacket, mom. And like, it's we just want, if we want more for our kids, we have to really look at ourselves. And if we wish that we were something else, or better at something, like, don't we would want that for our children, right?
Right.
So taking a good look at ourselves, and that's the hardest part, is that inner work. Because I mean, some of our realities of ourselves are not pretty, but recognizing that those unpretty realities we are sharing directly with our children.
Wow, that is enlightening, because you don't realize what you just said, because we think I'm going to show this part to my children, but you don't realize all the other things that they're witnessing. Like you said, oh my gosh, you know what happened today? Or you're complaining, to your husband, and they see all of that.
Or like, we're trying to teach, like you said, we're trying to teach them responsibility, but it turns into this
Yes.
lecture, and it's like, yeah, it's just kind of like, when we think about it, like, we don't like to admit we're wrong. We don't like to admit, that we made a mistake, or that we didn't know what we were doing, or that we lost control. Like, we just don't like to admit the things that are not so nice, that don't feel good, because we all want to feel good about ourselves.
I think that's the
So, I
bottom
mean,
line, right?
so feeling good about yourself comes from within, though. And
Yes.
our need, again, looping back this conversation, right? Our need to be right, to have control of the situation, like in the external versus our internal. That's all. We got to get rid of all of that, because that's just our need. That has nothing to do with our child. That has nothing to do with anything else but our need to feel fulfilled, or have our ego stroked, or just that pat on the back, like, yeah, you're top dog, like,
Yes.
it serves no purpose other than for us. And in that process, we forget that it can be damaging to our children. And I mean, we think like, oh, it was just that time. But then if we say that all the time, how many times has it been just that one time that I dropped my kid off and I'm worried about ruining their whole day? Because for me, I know it's more than two hands for sure. And I've got 4 kids. So it's probably gonna be like in the hundreds by the time, my kindergarten is in 5th grade. You know what I mean? So
Right. What's the conversation? And thank you so much. I think this conversation needs to be, just heard and discussed, and really make people realize that, because it is a uncomfortable conversation, because we are talking about, being vulnerable and talking about the things that we shouldn't be doing, but at the same time having grace and forgiving ourselves, right? For when we do
yeah.
make mistakes. But I know you're really busy. What are your closing words to, like you said, your mission to inspire and, advocate? I love the conquer stigma and adversity. What are your final words to remind us moms and parents?
I mean, we all face stigma, we all face adversity. Everything is an opportunity to grow. So even with your kids in those moments, you have to be able to let go and view it as an opportunity to grow. And being a good leader, which a parent is, because
Mhm.
again, parent-child relationship and that hierarchy, being a good leader also means being a good follower. And being a good leader also means being able to be open, and to be able to accept somebody else's idea that's not your own, that's better than yours. And even if that means from someone that you see as in this power dynamic. And I don't want to say inferior because I don't see my children as inferior. Like, I think it's very important that we treat each other as equals. I mean, to an extent, there's an extent that, you know, we do have like free, you know, the ruling thumb over it all, but treating
Hmm.
them as equals, because again, it boils down to being heard, acknowledged, understood, not judged, you know, and just those human qualities. So be a human.
Yes, we all need to be more human instead of little, we end up being, I know sometimes we don't realize we feel like we're dictators, but we have the best intentions. But like you said, it ends up damaging, right, our relationships.
Mhm. And it's just, I mean, we can't. So now from this moment, you know, if this is your first time hearing this, don't beat yourself up about the past, or even if this is a millionth time hearing these kinds of things, don't beat yourself up, because the past is gone, the future is
Hmm.
yet to come. So live in the present, make that decision, or take that moment, because it really takes conscious effort in the heat of the moment, those heated moments with your kids, to stop and just be like, this is too much, or like we need to step away, or you're right, or whatever it is, you know, just breaking that moment, because it really does take conscious effort. I mean, you talk about working with a child too. Anybody, it takes conscious effort because we're on autopilot to just stop. So being mindful and aware. And again, human, treat everybody as humans.
Definitely. What a great way to end. Well,
For
thank you
little
so
humans,
much.
especially, they're fragile.
Yes. I don't think we realize that, right? Because we're in this, we need to prepare you for adulthood.
Yep, it's that beautiful burden. Like, you know, it's a beautiful journey with your children. You learn so much from them, but also taking that to heart. Like, you learn so much from your children and being able to admit that even to your child in the moment.
I love
So, and the
that.
burden is, you know, we have this responsibility, but in that responsibility, you know, we have a lot of power. So you use that in the best way possible. Don't use that abusively.
Right.
And abuse can even
Thank
be
you.
unknown. So
Yes, that's what I'm realizing. When adult children share, what happened when I was 8? What happened when I was 12? And you think,
I know they remember the weirdest things and you're like, what? Like, but you don't remember this?
yes, exactly.
We leave like footprints on their memories and we don't realize the good, the bad, the ugly, like everything. So we just have to be really mindful, and think about how we would want to be treated, or think about how you, the 4-year old, the 5-year old, the 18-year old, the 16-year old you, in a moment like
Yes.
that with your parents or somebody else who you respected or cared about you, or was your caregiver. Like, how did you feel in those moments? So
Oh
yeah,
yeah,
being
that gives that
self-reflective.
gives yeah, real big perspective. Well, thank you so much, Melo. I really appreciate this. How can people
Thank you.
find you on your
Oh,
social
you can find
media?
me on Instagram. Motivated by Melo is on my Instagram handle. I made it really easy too on Facebook, facebook.com, motivated by Melo. And I have a website now, motivatedbymelo.com. So you can find me lots of places. Open to strategy calls if you have a business or even parenting stuff. Um, yeah, get in touch with me. And if you just want to see what I'm about, definitely hit up my Instagram. That's where most of my content is.
Yes, you must follow Melo, and thank you so much. I really appreciate
Thank
it,
you
and
so
I'm
much for
sure
having
we'll
me. I
keep.
always love talking about this stuff with
Oh,
you.
yeah, we definitely share the same mission and journey. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day. Okay, bye,
Aloha.
Melo.
You too. Bye.
Bye.